Hey, yo.
If I can be serious for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Acknowledge me.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone out there. Mark's Mafia, welcome back to the Sit Down Marks podcast. I am the co-host from the East Coast, Primo from the pod, here with another episode of Cheap Pasta Primo. But first, let's get to some housekeeping about what's going on in the main show with Sit Down Marks podcast. So recently, at the beginning of August, we had our SummerSlam review. Can you believe what happened at SummerSlam, where Cody Rhodes won the WWE Championship and Brock Lesnar returned, as well as Seth Rollins cashing in on night one against CM Punk? Bonkers SummerSlam. I actually really enjoyed it. I believe I gave it an 8.5. Now, coming up soon, we do have the Shane Show coming onto the podcast, as well as the end of the pod. We are going to have a full-length episode talking all about TNA. Be sure to catch us live at sitdownmarks.com. That is sitdownmarks.com. You can just go straight there. It'll direct you straight to our YouTube channel. You can also join our Discord, with the description will be down below. Now let's get into what we're going to talk about today on Cheap Pops with Primo. We're going to talk about gimmicks that necessarily shouldn't have worked, but did. There's been plenty of gimmicks out there that they've tried in the wrestling world that obviously didn't stick. But then there are a handful that did stick and surprisingly well. So let's get down to which of those we're going to talk about today. And we're going to start with the Hurricane. Now, we all know Gregory Helms, Shane Helms. He originally came from WCW, part of 3 Count. And then when he came to WWF, WWE, late Attitude era, early Ruthless Aggression era, he was the Hurricane. Now, this wouldn't be as surprising. Like, this, it's not much of a surprise that it got over because he's a superhero gimmick. Kids would love that. They'll eat it up. It's more of the timing and to when he debuted this character. It was around, like I said, Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression Era, very serious time frame in wrestling world. So, comic book hero gimmick, superhero gimmick during this time was kind of interesting, especially when you had serious characters like Triple H, Kurt Angle, and Stone Cold out there. But he was able to get over with the fans. He was adored by fans, and he had a great look. He would fly off the top ropes with his cape. He had the entrance, the stand back, there's a hurricane coming through. And then, the whole thing where he did the pose. Everybody knew the pose. You know what? I'm doing it right now. You can see me. His catchphrases, what's up with that? All that stuff. And even whenever he was doing the, where like he took the mask off and he was like doing detective stuff backstage, like Bruce, Bruce Wayne type situation where he's not actually the Hurricane, but he's doing detective stuff. Anyway, it all worked at a time whenever it necessarily shouldn't have worked, but it did. He had charisma, he had the catchphrases, he had the underdog, unexpected victories. Later on, he ended up having Mighty Molly, Molly Holly joining his group. Well, not group, but it was just him and Mighty Molly. And then later on, he had his SHIT, or Superhero in Training, and Rosie. So that's pretty cool. And of course, he was fairly successful as the Hurricane. He was Cruiserweight Champion, Hardcore Champion. He was Tag Team Champions, European Champion. He did a lot as this character. So he definitely wasn't somebody to overlook. And you can hear by the way I'm talking about him, I actually enjoyed him as well. So the Hurricane, one gimmick that necessarily shouldn't have gotten over due to what it was, but he did get over big time. Next up, let's talk about one that's more recent in AEW, Orange Cassidy. Now, there's a big shift in what I was just talking about with the Hurricane to what I'm going to be talking about with Orange Cassidy. As far as the gimmick itself, the gimmick of Orange Cassidy, he's just a regular dude. Like, lazy, I guess, would be the gimmick. Where he's all the way to Justin Roberts and introducing him like Orange Cassidy from wherever, weighing whatever, and he always gives the half-hearted thumbs up. He wrestles with his hands in his pockets, and he barely ever takes his shades off. But the thing is, this guy is actually super athletic. He can throw drop kicks like no one else with his hands in his pockets. And he can also do everything else he needs to do. So, and it's an interesting gimmick because it looks lazy and all that, and the crowd gets behind him and they all cheer for him, and he does his lazy kicks on somebody. And, it's funny. But at the end of the day, he can go. He can wrestle. He was international champion, AEW international champion. One of them is like the longest reign in AEW, I believe. So he clearly is skilled. And it's just funny that a gimmick where you basically are like, I don't care, meh, lazy, got super over in AEW. But it did, and like I said, he won multiple championships, and he's very popular. Next up, let's talk about a gimmick that I wouldn't say it shouldn't have worked because of the gimmick, but I'd say that it necessarily was surprising that it worked because of who it is. And that is Broken Matt Hardy. Now, as a big-time Team Extreme fan, I followed Matt and Jeff Hardy from my freaking childhood. So to know Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy and V1 version 1 Matt Hardy all through the 2000s, the Ruthless Regression era. So even when he got the ECW championship, all his accolades, US championship, feud with MVP, for him to reinvent himself into the Broken Matt Hardy, yes, was surprising that it worked. Now, it's whenever he went back to TNA, and he I won't say transformed, but I guess you could say that, but his gear changed, his music changed, his vernacular changed, he came up with the accent, kind of like I was trying to imitate, but I'm terrible at doing. He had the drone, Vanguard 1. He had the freaking, what's the butler's name? I don't remember the butler's name, but he had the butler. He had the whole match at his house at the Hardy compound when he was trying to basically reawaken Brother Nero when he tossed Jeff in the water and he came out, Brother Nero. And the whole delete thing, delete, got over big. Like, this whole gimmick revitalized Matt Hardy so much that he became the TNA World Champion, and like, people begged for this character to come out and when they returned to WWE. And eventually we did see some of it when he was tagging with Bray Wyatt, but not near the level that it was in TNA. But like I said, the reason I think that I'm surprised it got over the way it did was because of what it was, with the over-the-top accent, the vernacular that he was using, the everything. As whenever we know what the past 20 years of Matt Hardy is, But I think the reason it worked so well was because he leaned so hard into it. He gave everything to it, and it was great. It absolutely loved it. Everybody loved it. Kudos to Matt Hardy. Now, the final and most popular gimmick that I'm going to talk about that shouldn't have got over as far as what it actually is, but it got super over, obviously. What kind of a wrestling fan would I be if I didn't have The Undertaker on this list? Now, when I say The Undertaker, like getting over, you're probably thinking like, Primo, you're an idiot. But sit back and think about that for a minute. He's the dead man. He's an undead cowboy, Undertaker. So he's like an undead cowboy mortician. So we're supposed to believe there's a dead guy wrestling in the ring, even to the point when he came out at Survivor Series, children were actually scared of this character that came out. And it worked. And he was, obviously, The Undertaker is one of the GOATs. He's amazing. But it's just funny because when you think about the actual gimmick, his original gimmick is like, how the heck did that happen? Like, how did that work? But what I think helped it out was, he went just like Matt Hardy in what I was talking about just a minute ago. He went all in on The Undertaker. He gave everything to it. I think a huge part of that was his refusal to do any kind of like outside work or outside interviews. Anytime you saw Mark Calloway, he was The Undertaker and he was in character. So the dead man, The Undertaker, and not only that, but he became the American Badass. And then he went back to being The Undertaker, but it's like we didn't blink an eye, We just always knew. He's always the dead man, big evil, But at the end of the day, when you really think about it, The Undertaker, he's the dead man, grave digger, who's what did you say? He's digging holes and burying souls. Oh man, but obviously he got over as one of the best of all time, and I love The Undertaker. But that is the final gimmick I'm going to talk about today. I thought that this list was actually kind of short. There's plenty more on the list that I could have talked about. If you have any gimmicks on the list that you would like mentioned or talked about later on, or maybe you just want to talk about yourself, feel free to drop them in the description. Feel free to drop them in our Discord. Join the Discord. Like I said, the description's at the bottom. Join the Discord and come talk to us there about any gimmicks that got over that maybe you don't think they should have. Another one, let's just throw an honorable mention out there. Luchasaurus. Dude is a walking dinosaur. I mean, if I said too much, I feel like Michael might come through the headphones and strangle me. But Luchasaurus is another one. He's a walking dinosaur. He got over. But there's plenty out there. Feel free to drop them in the description below or drop them in our Discord. That's going to be all for today's Cheap Pops with Primo. Once again, coming up soon, we do have Shane's show on the podcast, as well as at the end of August, we will have a full-length episode all about TNA. See you next time, and as always, spread the good word of wrestling. If you're still here, I was also going to put, here's a couple other ones I was going to put on the list that I didn't talk as much about. Doink the Clown, because he's a clown, but whatever. Gold Dust. Early Mankind. Let's go with the Boogeyman. Dude eats worms. But anyway, peace.